Thank you for visiting Past the Wire TV, the YouTube channel of PastTheWire.com. Hey everybody, hope all is well, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Past the Wire TV. Zilla Racing Stables is, in my opinion, one of the more exciting partnerships going in thoroughbred racing right now. And these partnerships are definitely the now way of racing and becoming more and more prevalent, more and more popular. Zilla is interesting to me because you know they're very transparent in how they operate. They're exciting. They're enthusiastic. They win a lot of races. Their silks stand out, so they're easy to follow, and they offer partnerships at every level of the game and at every stage, from stakes to claiming to sales opportunities and buying 2-year-olds and even yearlings. Mike Piazza, the founder, was good enough with his time to join us on this week's show. Brings a wealth of knowledge to the table. Very, very, very knowledgeable guy. And more importantly, very transparent and very forthcoming with his knowledge and with his opinions. And we had a great conversation. We talked about a lot of different aspects of the sport. The business side, the horse side, the betting side, the growth side, just about everything we went into. So I think it's a great conversation. I think everybody will get something out of it. Like I said, Mike brings a lot of knowledge to the table. One thing I will say is that yours truly pressed the button at the wrong time and cut off the very beginning of the show. Wasn't worth it to start all over or do it again. It's just a couple of minutes of the introduction basically, and basically we just went over what I just said. So it kind of jumps in the middle. I apologize for that, but I think you'll still all enjoy the show and get a lot out of listening to Mike and learning a little about Zilla and his philosophies and some of the things they're doing and what's going on. So thanks for tuning in. Enjoy the show, and we'll always be back with more. So ciao for now.
To also see the way these guys do it, and they sustain themselves, and just kind of gave me motivation to carry on. And then I went full time doing it in 2016, and there's no looking back now.
And I got to say that you've come a long way in a short period of time. How old is Zilla?
So we started in 2012.
Okay.
So, and I mean, we're now 9 years in. I guess this would count as our 10th season.
Right.
It does feel like it's been a short time, but at the same time, when I say 9 years, 10 years, it seems like,
well, it sounds longer than it is, but for me, as somebody who's watched the growth of Zilla, and it's easy to follow you guys because your silks are so prominent, so they kind of stand out. And I would never think that really matters, but it's made me aware of your horses all the time because the silks are just so different and prominent. But I noticed that you've in the past couple of years have just grown and grown and grown in a steady way from claiming horses. Now you seem to have horses with a lot of not a lot, but 3 or 4 of the top tier trainers, guys that win a lot of races. And you've even got a couple of horses with Chad Brown, I believe, correct?
Yeah, we gave Chad 2 horses, and it's going to be with Chad will be on a small,
right,
type of thing, because
it's hard to even get him to take a couple of horses, right?
He told me, he's like, listen, I can give you 2 stalls and you can operate them as you see fit. And so we'll pick some spots to send him 1 or 2.
Right.
But yeah, just the fact that he is willing to take a horse with us was great. But all the trainers we use, we really don't have a problem sending horses to any of them, and that's what makes it tough, because we don't buy that high volume of horses. I mean, we do buy 4 or 5 maybe a year, but if we could buy more, I would like to sprinkle them out a little bit more than we do.
How involved are you and I know you guys claim horses and you buy horses at the sale, and I think you'd even consider buying horses privately, correct?
Yeah, that's the toughest part because when you're trying to buy privately at the price range that we can buy, nobody really wants to give their horse up. You
Right.
know,
But
whereas
how involved are you personally? Are you the guy that picks out the horses? How does that work?
well, it varies from if we're claiming horses to buying horses. Which one would you like to hear about?
All of them. When you claim, who picks out the ones that you claim?
So claiming, like when we first started, we really weren't looking to be a claiming partnership. So I would kind of sit around and wait for the trainers to send you a horse a lot of times. But the trainers are very busy and they don't quite get, the opportunity to look at the form maybe as much as you would like if you're kind of itching to claim. So then we would start to dive in ourselves. Um, Recently, over the last year or so, I've been working closely with Jeff Boschwitz, who started his own group called Playing the Field Racing, John Bianco from Aquanova, and my partner Thomas Hearn, who works with me. And we basically, as soon as a form comes out, we start sending ideas back and forth. Jeff compiles all this data, like different claiming angles, like based on trainer moves and class moves and things like that. He'll do like a soft screen, send it to me, and then same thing with John. John will send me some horses, and I kind of dive deeper. I'm real big on watching replays. I like using magazine sheets. There's limitations to using magazine sheets. They give you a sheet number, with factoring ground loss, but it doesn't really account for pace and things like that. And then you have other speed figures like buyer figures and Thor Manager, which will give you a figure with factoring in pace, but doesn't factor ground loss. But I think overall, you just use them as kind of a guide. And but watching replays to me is like really what gives you, the insight of how a horse is doing, and also to, everyone always says when you see connections like sharp connections, and there's many out there. You see them, they drop a horse in, he's 3 to 5, and everyone's like, that guy's just trying to win a race. And like, I don't really buy that because like nobody's giving anything away in this business. And like even the sharpest connections, they're sharp for a reason.
Right.
And like, a lot of times when you see these horses where it looks like there's going to be a 6-way, 8-way shake, everyone's all over those horses, but those horses are like the obvious ones. And like generally they don't work out, you know, and the sharpest connections are very good at getting out before it's too late. That window of opportunity closes quickly, especially with claiming horses. They tend not to keep their form as good as a quality horse, and that ultimately what makes them often claiming horses. And they're just good at getting out at the right time and leaving something for the next connection. So we just kind of been filtering things through and then working with our trainer. One thing I really like with Orlando and Jonathan is, I mean, Jonathan is, we talk every day, and he's as buried into this as anybody can be. I mean, what an asset he is to their stable and to their barn. He knows all the horses, who's running where, and it's just been a pleasure to work with, and that's why, like, they get a little bit of negative, press sometimes, and it's so unfair because it's one thing I would like to even talk to you about is there's always this dialogue of who's cheating, and I think people make a big mistake looking at win percentage as to define who may or may not be cheating, because it's, think of like a baseball player. If you're a baseball player and you don't have a lot of power, even if you juice up, you're probably only going to hit a couple home runs, right? So you'll still be way below, the home run leaders and stuff like that. But even guys like Mark McGuire, Jose Canseco, Barry Bonds, even if they didn't do steroids, they would still hit a lot of home runs, right? So a lot of trainers, let's say you're a bad trainer, even if you were juicing your horses, you still may be a lower percent trainer, because without juicing your horses, again, I don't even like to use the term, but if that's what people think is happening, even a bad trainer will still be a low percent trainer because yeah, he's juicing his horses, but without the juice, he'd be out of business. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
And then the other reason why we can't use win percentage is because horse racing is very unique in any sport, NFL, Major League Baseball. It doesn't matter how bad your team is. When the schedule comes out, you're required to play that schedule against the better teams. So even if you have the worst team in the league, you are required to play that schedule knowing you're going to struggle to win a game. But in horse racing, you're not required to run a certain schedule. If your horse isn't that good, you can drop him down and put him in a race where he's the best horse. So it would be like a football team in the NFL saying, hey, we're no good this year, so we're not going to play the NFL schedule. You know what? We're going to drop down to the high school level. And all of a sudden you become, the best team in the league. Horse racing allows you the ability to like maneuver your horse and put them in proper spots. So we can't just use win percent as this guide to know who may or may not be cheating, because it's
I agree
very
with
hit.
that. It's interesting that you say that, because I wrote a series of articles about cheating a couple of months ago, and in one of them I talked about, people just blanket using win percentage as the red flag catch-all of
Yeah,
cheating, and anybody that's winning at 25 or 30 or 35% is almost automatically labeled a cheater, and I think that's unfair, because I think that people are not taking into consideration how much the game has changed from, like, 20 years ago, when, some of the Hall of Fame guys had 15%, win percentages, and they were considered the best around. And part of it is what you said. There are a lot, the purse structures today are so different than they were years ago, that they allow you to claim a horse for 20 and run back for 16, and you're really at no risk, because if you know your horse is going to run 1-2, the purse money and the claim is going to get you out on the horse anyway.
exactly.
And a lot of guys run aggressively that way, because they don't mind churning the horses. They don't mind losing a horse if he's going to run 1-2. And their percentages are high as a result of that. So the purse structure, and like you said, the leeway to drop horses down and run them in the right spots makes now a 20% trainer not all that great, where years ago it'd be like, wow, this guy wins at 20%. So I think you're right. I think you're on target where you say, it's not an automatic that somebody that wins at a high percentage. Is it something that is going to get scrutinized and looked at? Yeah, but you mentioned Orlando and Jonathan, and they were on the show months ago with me. And one of the reasons we had him on the show was because a lot of people were insinuating that Orlando was doing something nefarious. And at that time, he had surveillance on his barn. They were watching him day and night. He answered every question that I asked him. He was very forthright, very transparent, very forthcoming about everything. And he's still winning, and still working hard. So, I tend to agree that people get mislabeled, and as good as it was that Jason Service and Jorge Navarro got caught, okay, assuming they're guilty
Right.
and assuming they get convicted, as good as it was, and I would say that it was a good thing for the game, because if they were doing what it's alleged they were doing, they don't deserve to be around the game, okay? But the one negative that I'll take from that is that now everybody who's got an opinion and a voice, who thought that they knew what those guys were doing, now everybody they point at, they say, well, we were right about Service and Navarro, so obviously we're right about this guy, and obviously we're right about that guy, and that's dangerous. That's dangerous when you start labeling people that you don't really know and haven't been caught. I think that's a dangerous thing. Um, but it's the world of social media. Everybody's got a voice. Everybody becomes an expert. Everybody's got an opinion. It's probably always been that way. Now it's just easier to get those opinions out there. But what's it like working with Orlando and Jonathan? They're hard workers, correct?
Yeah, I mean, Orlando, he started training. He became an owner. His stable basically started through them owning horses themselves. He gets on the horses, he rides them. He was grooming them himself, hot walking, playing the role of multiple people. And the work ethic is second to none. I mean, it's why I'm willing to give this guy a shot. And like, it bothers me when people, I don't want to be associated with anyone who's doing anything, illegal. And, we take big pride in, how we're viewed in the public, and it means a lot to our brand, our image. But I just can't, this guy's work ethic is second to none. He doesn't, like, his expenses are so low. He doesn't bill you all these extras. Like, so, we have a shot to actually make some money using him as a trainer, because his training bills are so low, and he's, the communication is off the charts. I mean, I get the detail on every horse multiple times a week. And now maybe when the barn grows bigger and bigger, maybe that becomes less and less. I don't know. But right now it's there. And it's real important to me, because I can't do my job the way I want to run Zilla Racing if the trainer is not providing me all the feedback. And it's great. Like when you use big qualified trainers, look, you don't need to be in touch with them as often, because they're on top of everything. But when you get these guys who are like in the stage of making it, sinking or swimming, and you see them working so hard, it's hard not to want to give them a shot. And if there's some negative, view out there of him, until something does come forward, if there is anything. I mean, he had his barn, he told me rated multiple times, where they just showed up and rated his barn. I mean, he's never had a positive anything, test wise. So I'm not, I don't know. It's just it just bothers me, because I see the work ethic and others don't.
Yeah, well, and that's part of the problem. People just don't know, and you're not the first person who's told me that about him. There's a couple of people that are bettors that are around that I know, that say that guy is just always at the barn, always working, and just they notice the same thing that you're noticing about his work ethic. Let me ask you something. As running a partnership like Zilla, you take in people that are getting into a difficult game. Okay, you have to understand some of the game going in, because there's a good shot that you're not going to make any money. You might, but you might not. How difficult is it, Mike, to manage not just the horses and the trainers, but the partners that are coming in and getting involved, and their expectations and what they're looking for? How do you balance that, and how difficult of a job is that?
That is the most difficult part. The horses are not quite as difficult, as because end of the day with partners, I'll give it like an example. In the NFL, you're at midfield and it's 4th and inches. You can make the argument to punt or go for it. If you were to poll the players, most of them probably would say go for it, right?
Right.
But if you were to poll the coaches might be split 50-50. Let's punt. It's early in the game. We can play field position here and blah, blah, blah. You do get owners where if it was 4th and 20 from your own sideline, your own 20-yard line,
right,
you want to punt or go for it, they would still say go for it. Like, and it's only because a lot of them are inexperienced. They don't have an understanding, even from handicapping. Like, I'll be at a race and they'll pull out the racing form and they'll talk about some bets that they're playing. And, they see a horse that won a 3 other than, or like say a 3 life 35,000 claimer. And now it wins that race, but now it's in an open 25. And they'll say like, that's a class drop. Or you have a horse who's running like a 3-year-old, like in New York, they write these 3-year-old only claiming races.
Right.
So like a 32,000 3-year-old only claiming race. Like that race is pretty weak. But if you were to ask that person, like if that horse went from a 3-year-old only 32,000 claimer and showed up in an open 20 against older horses, they would view that as a class drop. Right. Not realizing that, no, the horses that are in the open 20 would crush these 3-year-old only horses. Right. The claim price isn't really indicative of the talent of the horse. That's why you see the higher claim price associated with maidens. You look at like New York breds. They write a New York bred, I think maiden 50 for New York bred 2-year-olds. They're the slowest horses on the grounds.
Right.
Like they are the slowest horses that are at the track. Yet the claiming price might be 40 or 50,000 for those horses. Like, so people don't understand class. And I think that's the area where I try to do my best to educate the partners and bring them up to speed. And we have been real lucky to have a lot of partners who seem to be in this for the right reasons. Like they want to learn. And that's the part that makes what I do enjoyable, because I want to teach. I really enjoy, telling people how I see things. And I like to have the conversation both ways. So like they can push back on me, and always having an open dialogue so they feel comfortable that they can, reach out to me and push back on me. I'm not looking for pats on the back. I like to be challenged, and I think we all get better that way. And going back to like learning, when you had asked me about how we get our horses, we talked about the claiming horses. And like when I go to the 2-year-old sales, I work with Connor Foley at Oracle Bloodstock. Looks
Right.
like the sun is going down, so this thing is like.
That's all right.
But Connor Foley, he's our bloodstock agent. I've been with him from the beginning, and I go to every 2-year-old sale now and a lot of the yearling sales. I clock every horse personally from the backside. I mean, I'm there from start to finish, watching all the slow motion replays of the horses. And I owe everything to Connor, because he taught me so much. Every time I would go to sales, him and Jim Hatchett, who works with him, Jim Hatchett trained horses for 40 years. He's got 60 years experience in this industry. And I got to learn under them, and they taught me so much. And, going back to when we talked about with Zilla, when we first started, where we are today. So it's interesting because I like using analogies, but when Zilla came up to the batter's box, we had to make a choice to either swing for a home run, which might mean lots of strikeouts, or just make solid contact and get some hits and get on base, and hopefully we score some runs. And Connor and I, kind of developed that strategy from the beginning, that we would be better off, playing a little safe, not trying to swing for the 500-foot home run, and make sure we get off to, because if you get off to a bad start, you get left behind.
Right.
And so we would buy horses that had better conformation. Maybe they weren't the horse that went 9-4, 10 flat, out like a superstar, because we couldn't afford those. But we didn't want to sacrifice on conformation, because we wanted to make sure our horse had the highest chance of getting to the racetrack. That was a goal. I know it don't sound like it would be, but so many horses don't even make the races.
I know it would. Well, I understand that aspect of the game. So most people going in don't realize you can buy a horse out of a sale, and there's a chance they never get to the races. So
Yeah, it's at a much higher percentage than people think.
right.
So Connor and Jim, they filter their horses for me to these horses that had great conformation, but because of our price range, we had to sacrifice on pedigree, pretty substantially. And that left us with a chance to buy a little bit of an athlete. And we were successful. I mean, Celtic Chaos was a big hit for us. We bought him quite early into our start. 55,000, first year Dublin. And I still remember bidding 50,000 on him, and I stopped, I went 45,000 and somebody else went 50.
Right.
And I said, all right, I'm good. I told Connor, I was right next to him. I said, I don't want to spend more than 50 for a Dublin. And he's Mike, just go again. Don't just hit it again. And just before the hammer drops, I hit it again. And this is funny because I told him to go 2,000 more.
Right.
But the auctioneer put up 5,000 more. So I thought somebody else already got it. And then the guy with the slip comes over to us to sign a slip. And I'm like, wait. I said 52. So the guy said, listen, we had you at 55. So it came to the point where the guy says, look, you either take it for 55 or he's got to go back in the ring. Connor's like, just take the horse. And I'm like, all right. So we take the horse. Jonathan, this is so crazy. We buy the horse. He goes to Tom Worley to begin his career.
Right.
This horse is the worst workhorse you'll ever meet. This horse is so lazy, you can't even get him to run. I mean, we had Jose Ortiz breeze him for us out of the gate in Saratoga. He comes up to me, he's like, Mike, that horse no good. We had Manny Franco breeze him out of the gate, I think the second time, or just breeze him, and he's like, that horse ain't no good. And the horse looked like he was a complete dud. And
Before you go on, I got to know, what's it like as running a partnership, okay? Buying a horse for 55,000, which is not a lot of money, but it's, you know, it's money. And a rider like Jose or Manny coming off and saying, Mike, that horse is no good. That's got to be a gut punch, no?
it is, but for me, so I have this position that I always tell everybody, and I tell Connor this all the time. The job of a bloodstock agent actually is not to pick you a nice horse. If you think of it that way, I think you're going to set yourself for failure. The job of a bloodstock agent and the job of me, being involved in the sale process as well, is to eliminate as many bad apples from the population as possible and leave yourself, with a population of horses that is possibly as good as it can be, to give you, as much of a chance. But even when you clear out as many bad apples as you can, you're still going to be left with a lot of bad apples in there. So like, I just tell Connor, just filter off the bad ones, because I understand, like, we're going to buy bad horses. So when I hear a horse is no good, like, honestly, like, it's not, I almost anticipated, because that's how tough this business really is, especially when you're buying horses for 55,000. I mean, you have to be even more realistic. But
Right.
it was, the opposite of a morning glory. The horse that shows you everything in the morning doesn't show up in the afternoon. This horse was given no indication he was going to be a runner, and he's kind of what put us on the map. I feel, and he won multiple stakes for us in Saratoga, and he's just been a great horse. We just retired him. Rudy Rodriguez had claimed him off of us.
Right.
Even going back to race placement, this horse was everything for us. And Brad Cox up in Saratoga last year is like, look at this horse's best days are behind him, but he's still a useful horse. He's like, we run for the New York bred 2 other than. He's like, we're going to have a real good shot to win it. We're probably going to lose him. And one thing I do, and I try to get my partners, when it comes to entry day, turn the emotional dial down to 0. If you cannot turn your emotional dial down to 0 on entry day, you won't make it in this business. You got to turn an emotional dial down to 0. But here's the thing, gentlemen. As soon as the entry comes out, crank that thing up. Which might be a good lead into, what we were, whether it was us or Orlando, or, to feel that when we were called out publicly for celebration, and I don't know how much of it was pointed towards Orlando himself or our group or everyone involved.
I don't know why it happened to begin with. I'll be honest with you. I didn't see it. I heard about it, but it bothered me because, I mean, I don't know how anybody who is a spokesperson or a front person for any racetrack criticizes a bunch of owners, or a trainer for rooting their horse, I mean, or celebrating a win. I mean, that's part of what this game is about, and that's what attracts certain people to it. I mean, the West Point commercial, which I'm sure you've seen, where the guy's on, I guess, like the recording on the phone, and I mean, the guy's a little over the top, but so what? He's winning the race. He's excited. I mean, that's what the game is. And the reason it annoyed me a little bit is when I got into claiming horses, it was around probably 1999, 2000. I decided to get maybe 5, 6 claiming horses on my own. Okay. And I didn't know, I knew a lot of different trainers. I didn't know who I was going to go to. And I was at Gulfstream and I said, you know what? I didn't know Peter Walder personally. Okay. But I used to see him at the racetrack. He used to win his share of races. And when him and his wife were at the racetrack and they had a horse running, okay, him and his then wife, and they were coming down the lane, the 2 of them would root with such passion And I would see it and I'm like, you know what? They care. They love what they do. They love their horses. You would think it was the Kentucky Derby. And it was, maybe a $7,500 or $10,000 claimer, and the passion was just overwhelming. And I approached him and I talked to him about getting some horses, and we became dear friends. We're still very close to this day, and he's still training horses, and he still has that passion. And so, that actually attracted me to him, and we did very well. Like I said earlier, I run one horse in my whole life at Saratoga, and she wins. So I'm tied for leading percentage owner at Saratoga for life, because I'm staying 1-for-1. But it was that passion, Mike, that attracted me to the guy. So what happened? I mean, I don't even know. I didn't see it. So tell me what happened, and how it happened, and
Well,
why it happened, if you can tell.
there's been like this constant, almost every time Orlando has a horse running, like this person is making some negative comment and calling him a magician. I mean, when you think about, which many would say this sport's a dying sport, and we're trying to promote it. When you have the people who are like the front on national TV, I mean, I had a horse running with Orlando named Smile O'Brien.
Right.
He was a turf horse. We claimed him in the dirt. He started to go sour on the dirt. We shipped him to Gulfstream Park, put him on the grass. We got his form back. We came up here. We were in, I think, a 25 claimer. And on air, I mean, again, this person has called him a magician, and things like that. But he says on air, if this horse wins this race, there better be a federal investigation. I mean, first off, this horse, when he was trained with Mike Maker, already won a starter allowance on the turf. I think it might have even been in Saratoga, but he won a starter allowance on turf, and he almost won the race. This 25,000. He got beat just at the wire. And if you want to use buyer figures, which this person loves buyer figures, he ran an 86, but he ran an 86 before for Mike Maker on the turf. So like when you're making a comment that if a horse runs a figure that he ran previously on the turf, there has to be a federal investigation. It just is bad for the sport, and it looks bad on us, our brand. It's like we're associating ourselves with this guy who's like doing something illegal, when like that it's so uncalled for there, especially coming from him. But when we won the race with Here Comes Jackie, she goes by the wire, and Orlando does have a way of kind of like celebrating, a very amplified way, well after the horse wins the race, right? So it may echo through, everyone screaming for their horses. And it's been a little bit different this year with no fans. So Orlando gets really amped up. It's going to stand out more than usual because there's no fans yelling with you.
Right.
But everyone is yelling in a race. I mean, if you were at the racetrack and a horse is coming down a lane and you just panned and looked back at all the people everywhere, everyone's screaming for their horses. The people bet $2 to win or bet screaming for their horse. And it's common when a horse crosses a wire that the people who won are going to celebrate. But the horse goes past the wire, and Acacia makes a comment about, the trip the horse got or whatever. And he's like, first thing I want to do is give an apology to the fans that had to witness that behavior. And it's like the fans are like, they're feeding off of that energy because they do it themselves. That's what fans do. You're drawn to it. And to criticize that publicly on TV is just so bad. And I don't get it. And it just bothers me because personally, and my partners know, like, I'm not a spike to football kind of guy. I'm more likely to cry when my horse wins a race than I am to over celebrate. I don't spike the football. It's just me. I'm the kind that just hands the football back to the referee. It's just me. But I'm not going to judge how others celebrate. And I can tell you what, Orlando, again, he does every role. He's there first thing in the morning. He's galloping horses. He's breezing horses. He's working as a groom. He's doing every role. And he's an owner. He owns his own horses. So if anyone can criticize celebrating, it's going to be people who never really experienced ownership. Because if you experienced ownership, you would know how many times the phone rings and your trainer has to tell you, hey, sorry, I got bad news. Your horse ain't going to make it to the races. He hurt himself today. Or, hey, you know what? The horse you spent $200,000 on, horse no good, you know? And you constantly are losing money in this business, constantly getting let down. Every time the phone rings and I see it's Brad Cox, my first reaction is like, oh no, oh no. That's not normal, right? When a phone rings from someone that you're employing, you don't expect it to always be bad news. When a trainer calls you, it's like, oh no. When the guy at the farm calls me, we have a bunch of our 2-year-olds down at Woodford Thoroughbreds in Ocala. When John calls me, my first thing, he's like, hey Mike, how's it going? How you doing? I'm like, no. We'll get to that later. What's going on? I need to know, because it's almost always something wrong. We've experienced, and these are living animals. Like, we're rooting for these animals from the day we buy them. We're experiencing their ups, their downs, their injuries. And it's so hard to win a race. And when it all comes together, all the money you spent and all the letdowns that you've experienced, when you actually see your horse cross the wire in front, that's that emotion coming out. And I'm not going to judge how someone celebrates. And it's like every sport, the fans go crazy. Like Thomas, who works for me, he said the New York Islanders, I don't watch hockey much, but I guess when they celebrate after they score a goal, they have like this 30-second thing that goes on where like they're like this loud celebration. And like, look, I get it. There's excessive celebration, right? In some sports, you can get penalized. But I'm a big believer. Take someone to the side, say, hey, I think it'd be in your best interest to not do this or not do that. But when you have someone in the front, a voice as loud as that person's, criticizing people, celebrating and saying you owe an apology to the, oh, sucks, man.
That's unfortunate. Is that something you had to talk to your partners about and kind of soften that a little bit? Because that would be, I mean, if I was a novice to the game and was involved in a partnership and something like that happened, it would be like a down for me. I'd be like,
Sure.
what's
It's a
that?
business killer.
Right.
All this stuff is business killer. That's why I don't know why it's coming from him. And yeah, I did, I addressed my partners, but I did tell them, I said, look, don't try to like celebrate even more now to prove a point. Like, let's not go there. You know what I mean? Do your thing. Um, I still want to be respectful. It's a competition, but I'm also like, I don't know. I know how difficult this business is and how many times we all get bad news. When a horse crosses a wire and I see my horse win, the first thing I'm doing before I even celebrate is I'm looking to see there's no horse that broke down on the track down at the 8th pole, like make sure I didn't miss anything, because it's like the worst. If you are like celebrating, yet your opponent, again, they're your opponents, but
Right.
together and we all want the same things. And you see someone else's horse who, just, got their head kicked in and stuff. So like, you have to be mindful of them. I mean, I am anyway. I'm not saying you have to be.
Right.
Um,
It's only right. I would be the same way. But a lot of times what people don't realize is you're so caught up in your own horse and what's going on with your horse and in the race, you might not know that something happened or that there was an incident. You know what I mean? Because, I'm sure you're different and I'm different because like I watch a race, I'm usually aware of everything that's going on and I'm watching more of like a pan view in my head,
yeah,
the horse I bet on, you know what I mean? Because I like to see
yeah, me too.
happening, you know what I mean?
Overall, yeah,
And that comes with experience. But I think that most people are just watching their horse or the horse they bet, and something else that happened, they have no idea about. You know what I mean? So their horse crosses the wire first, they're
yeah,
yelling and screaming, not realizing that there might have been an incident or a horse might be down or a rider down or pulled up or something like that. So,
right. It's kind of like, my son, he's 4 years old, and I'm sure when he's playing little league and stuff, and he, hits a home run or plays football and breaks some tackles and goes for a touchdown, I'm going to be all eyes on him crossing the line and seeing how he is after he scores. And yeah, you're not going to be paying attention to the other kids who might be down the other side of the field, but I got what you're saying. And It's unfortunate and it's just so uncalled for. And like I just feel like we're helpless. Like there's nothing's gonna happen, nothing's gonna be done.
Yeah, but it's something that really shouldn't happen. I mean, we should all be pulling as competitive as this game is, and I think Umberto Rispoli, when he was on the show, said it best. We were talking about how riders share the same locker room then on the racetrack. He goes, listen, he goes, we're all friends in a room, but we're all enemies on the racetrack. You know what I mean? And it was kind of a good analogy. We are all part of the same sport, so I think it falls upon all of us when the game is in the kind of shape that it's in and in the trouble that it is in, and we are on life support in a lot of different ways. We need to be encouraging people to get involved, and not just gamblers. Okay, the sport always, you always hear people talking about, well, we need to grow the gamblers, and we do. Okay, we need handle, we need gamblers, absolutely, but we need owners too, because owners and bettors are the only two people that are putting money into the game.
Yeah,
Everybody else is taking money out of the game. Okay,
right. That's
it's
that's what aggravates me. It's like the owners are the ones who, buy the horse. They're putting up all the money. They're the ones who are taking the beat, and like everyone else, like you said, is taken out.
well, bettors too, bettors and owners.
Right.
Everyone's
Better
putting,
too, yeah.
they're
Um,
they're putting in, and they are the two groups I think have the least voice, and what we should all be doing, and all of us. Okay, although we're competing, we need to be working together to bring new people into the game, and discouraging people from rooting for their horse
yeah,
is the opposite of doing. That's driving people away
yeah.
from the game. I mean, that makes no sense to me. That's just
And honestly, like when Orlando celebrates every race I've been at, and especially in Saratoga, like everyone else likes it. Like they're feeding off of it.
right.
Um, it's just
I know Peter was like that when I had horses with him. He used to be a little off the top. I mean, I remember one time, his then wife Francine, actually, we were in the restaurant at Gulfstream, the old Gulfstream, before they redid it. Okay, and it wasn't my horse. It was a filly that they had from Murray Durst. Okay, Murray and Lillian Durst. It was a couple of years after they had that nice 3-year-old Lil's Lad that was on the road to the Derby, but didn't quite make it. But I remember the filly's name. Her name was Our Girl, and I had convinced Murray to give the horse to Peter, and he did, and it was a maiden special weight race at Gulfstream, and she was coming down the lane, and she was and Francine got so excited that at the top of the stretch, she jumped up on the chair in the restaurant and was screaming, "Come on, girl! Come on, girl! Come on, girl!" And by mid-stretch, she was actually on the table where we were worried that the table was going to break or glasses were going to break, things were falling. Didn't matter. She was jumping and screaming and jumping. The whole restaurant was looking at her. You would have thought it was the Kentucky Oaks. It was a maiden special weight race, and she did win it. But some people get like that, I mean, it's part of the game, and probably not a negative part. I mean, I'm different. I could watch a race, Mike. I could be alive for a pick six for 300,000, and it could be head bobbing to the wire, and you'd be standing next to me, and you wouldn't even know I'm alive. Okay, because that's just I have rooted on occasion. You know what I mean, and I'm more likely, if I'm at the track with you and you got a horse, and I'm more likely to root for your horse out of excitement. But when I'm betting and it's alive for a lot of money, I'm usually very quiet. My good friends say that I have a tell that if I'm alive for a lot of money, I lean, but I'm not aware of it. You know what I mean? So I don't know I'm doing it, but they say I do it. But rooting is a good part of the game.
yeah.
You know what I
Look
mean?
at I remember. I mean, look at you go to the track and they got the programs rolled up and they're hitting themselves like they're whipping the horse. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like these fans don't need an apology.
No, I agree, man. That's just complete detachment with what's best for the game and reality. And I don't get it. Some people are just negative people. I mean, I don't know. So where is Zilla heading right now? I mean, you got horses with Brad Cox. You've got horses with Chad Brown. I think you've got Danny Gargan, correct?
Yeah, we have one with Danny.
All right, you've got Orlando. You've got horses with guys that are winning. You know you're hitting on all different levels of the game. Where are you looking to go?
Also, we just to not leave them out. And Ray Handel and Ray's done a great
Right,
job with us. We've had some
absolutely.
success with Ray, and we just started to do some business with Brittany Russell,
Okay,
and we bought her 2-year-old out of the sale as well down in Maryland. And we're kind of like we've been claiming. We've been very active. We've had some good success. We've got out shook on a couple of good horses, but um, it's time consuming. One thing that's tough, like I'll spend 3-4 hours a night watching replays and going through everything. And then you put a claim together, and then the horse scratches and you did all the work for nothing, or,
right.
it's a shake on a horse, you lose the shake. But we're really looking to, we're going to be as active as can be. I mean, we're looking to claim at a real high level and just get as many horses as we can. And, we just missed out. Another thing, educating partners is we try to put together a claim for Pete's play call last year in Saratoga,
Right.
and I couldn't fill it. Everyone was like, "Oh, he's 7 years old. He's kind of, who he is, and he's out of conditions and no interest." And I'd always make the case, well, like when you claim these older horses that are out of conditions, like you're never really overpaying for them, because like you overpay for horses with conditions.
Right.
A lot of those horses will never exhaust those conditions. So therefore you overpaid for them by definition. When a horse is like a maiden 40 and he wins that race, if he doesn't improve, he's going to drop in claim price to
Right.
stay competitive.
Right.
And if he beats,
Made 40 runs for a quarter.
right,
Right.
and then you win a 2 life, you're in for a 3 life 14, and like
Right.
that's all things equal. And then you're in the open 12-5, like that's if your
Right.
horse doesn't really improve. And so as you exhaust conditions, your horse technically is losing value, as long as unless he obviously improves dramatically. But when you claim these older horses, like that's already been exhausted. Like his value is usually what they're worth. But these horses are like, I don't know, like I have a lot of people who don't want to buy 2-year-olds because they say they're too risky. But the only horses they want to claim are the maiden 40s, who never ran before, or the ones that ran one time. And like, so if you're opposed to the risk of a 2-year-old, then you should want horses like Pete's play call, because like that's the opposite of those horses. And but we got everybody up to speed, and they're open for anything now. I mean, we got a bunch of hungry guys. And
One of the things I liked about your website, I did look at it because I didn't know a lot about Zilla before we spoke. You talk a lot about transparency, and I believe you practice what you preach, because you had on there a very good explanation of why the shares exceed the price of the horse, and how that all breaks down financially. And there have been people that took a lot of heat, like the My Racehorse partnership, which is completely different than what you're doing, and I get that. But they took a lot of heat, even though they were transparent about what they were doing as well, and they're more selling, I think, just an experience, as opposed to an actual ownership. But they took a lot of heat, and you know, I didn't really think it was justified. I think that they were upfront about what they were offering, and I would have a hard time being upset if I paid a few dollars for an authentic win picture, a Kentucky Derby win picture with my name on it as one of the listed owners. I mean, that's kind of a cool keepsake.
sure.
But you were very transparent about that. Because can you explain a little bit for the people that don't understand as to why a partnership has to charge what they do in order to make money and be solvent and be able to
Yeah.
continue operating?
I love this question, Jonathan, because the interesting thing is there are people out there who will call me up and they'll point, to a specific partnership that's already established and say that one marks up their horses so much, so I don't want to be with them. But end of the day, the ones that don't mark their horses up at all, they don't ever expand. Like when I go to a 2-year-old sale, I don't ever get outbid. by the group that doesn't mark up their horses, because running this is no different than any other business. You have to bring in revenue. And so when the thing that most people don't understand is, I'll just use, like, I can use ourselves for an example, West Point. It doesn't make a difference. I like to use those guys because they've done it for a long time. But when you go to a 2-year-old sale, let's say, like, I personally buy horses. Like, I just bought a First Samurai colt from the April sale, $200,000. Steve Young, Peter Miller, and Peter Bradley were underbidders. Like, we were all standing right next to each other. I was hoping to get this horse for like 100 and a quarter. The horse breathes exceptionally well. Big stride on him, great gallop out, good body, strong hind end. I mean, just checked all the boxes. Pedigree a little light, but thought I could get him for 125, hoping. I'm bidding with these guys. I went to 200,000. I bought him. I bought this horse with my own money, 200 grand. When that hammer drops, first off, there was all these acquisition expenses to get to this point. I was down at the sale for 2 weeks. I bring some people that work for us down there to the sale. You got to pay for a hotel, airfare, rental car. You got to feed them. You got to pay them to do the work. And the work is 12, 14, 16-hour days sometimes. When we get up at 7 in the morning, we meet in the lobby, start clocking horses 8 o'clock. After we're done clocking, we go look at them in person. Then we go back and watch all the slow motion video of those horses, going through pedigrees. I mean, it's till midnight. I mean, and so you have all these expenses that add up. Then you buy a horse, $200,000 horse, hammer drops. The horse decides as he's walking back, go back in his stall and kicks the wall, breaks an ankle. I'm out $200,000, right? Like, I have one of two options. I either can eat the 200,000 or I can not tell you he has a bad ankle. I can say, hey, horse is good. He's going to go to the farm for a 30-day vacation. And then when he gets to the farm, after you guys buy in, say, hey, horse hurt himself at the farm. And like, so there's all this like evil that is out there, like that can happen to anybody who buys horses. And it's hard to be surrounded by people who don't engage in these kind of things. And when I buy a horse for 200,000, my partners know if he broke an ankle kicking a wall after I bought him, the partners are going to know about it. I'm never going to do any type of behavior, anything like where I'm going to, hide that from them. But that's a big risk to me and to the company, Zilla Racing. So like, you have to add that into the price of the horse, that one out of every so many that you buy could get hurt before you sell him, or they might not sell out at all. And again, he could get hurt right after the hammer drops. Also, you have to acquire additional investors. I had a partner who's been with us for several years, and when our horses go to Saratoga, I like to get the saddle towels that show you this is a Zilla horse. So like, if you're at the track and you don't know what your horse looks like, at least you say, oh, that's probably him. He's got the Z on his saddle.
Right.
And that partner said, why are you charging us for it? Because what I do is I bill every partnership, and it's on the website for like $200 a month, which covers like all our operating expenses, the website. We have a back end to our website that partners get access to, jockey insurance, just all the expenses involved. And he said, is this advertising expense built into this operating expense? And I said, yeah, it's part of it. He's like, why am I paying for Zilla Racing advertising? I'm like, well, first off, it's costing you about $1. But two, you only bought 3%. Where am I supposed to get the other 97% from? I have to reach out and acquire these people. So like, if you want to buy your own horse, you don't have to pay these expenses. You can go get your own horse and have to, but I still have to get the other 97. So we have to market. We have to try to acquire these people, and whether it's, marketing through, and again, we have to be, like we try to grow through, like I don't do much advertising, but like we try to grow through word of mouth. And I feel like the best advertising you can get is winning a race. I mean, end of the day, you finish second, you don't hear anything. You win a 16, claiming race, and like everyone knows about it. But like, it's a business where it's no different than any other business. If you are bringing in as much revenue as you're spending, or you're bringing less revenue than you're spending, like you're just not going to survive. And there's a lot of risk on the plate from the moment we buy them. At the same time, we're also starting in a business where most people are going to lose money. Most of these horses lose money. And that's the other thing that frustrates me in this business, because like, I can't think of too many other things in this world where the owner has to pray to like break even. Like, and it's tough. It's a tough business. So like, we have to be as efficient as we can. And that's the one thing I just can't tolerate, is being inefficient.
You know, that goes back to what we were talking about before about bringing owners in. When a game is, like you said, so tough that you've got owners that gotta pray to break even. Okay, that's a win if you break even and don't get slaughtered. And that every time your phone rings and it's your trainer or your farm, you gotta like, oh no, you know, more bad news in a game that's that tough. We're driving people away for rooting horses home. You know what I mean? I mean, that's ridiculous. You know what I mean? We should be doing everything we can to get people to want to become owners and invest in the game, you
Yeah, if you
know?
think about the opposite, if you
Yeah,
were to pan the camera onto them and look, showing the great time they're having, now the guy watching at home or the fan over there might say, you know what, I need to get involved in that.
right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Which goes to the West Point commercial. And years ago, I don't know if you remember, I want to say the NTRA used to have the commercial with the girl from the movie Point Break, the surfing movie with Keanu Reeves. I think her name is Lori Petty, but I'm not sure. And she would always be, they would show her on the apron at a racetrack screaming, "Go, baby, go, baby, go, baby." And there were all these commercials, and it was "Go, baby, go, baby, go." And she was always rooting the horses home. And we don't even have those kind of commercials anymore, but it was encouraging people to bet or be an owner, both. And it was, you know, showing somebody just, you know, rooting in that, you know, exciting part of the game, because, you know, like you said, winning in this game is not easy. So when you do, you know, you tend to celebrate a little bit, you know. But you're, you know, you're upfront and transparent about those costs, about what they go towards. And I think that that's a huge positive for you, Mike, because you know, I'm not up on a lot of the partnerships, but I've heard horror stories too. So there are some out there that are not nearly that transparent, and not nearly that upfront with what the costs are. And like you said, you know, the scenario of the, you know, horse that gets hurt and then they're selling them. I mean, I I hate that it happens, but I believe that it does happen probably more often than any of us would like to admit.
Sure. Yeah, it, it's unfortunate, but you know, this business just, I mean, I've seen the worst of it, you know, and you get, one thing I think a lot of people do make the mistake of is they judge an experience based on how their horse actually does. And we've had partners who have been really lucky. Like somehow the few horses they bought with us turned out to be some of the better ones they bought with us. And like, we had this one partner, John. Um, uh, he was with West Point before. He's, you know, awesome partner, and I don't know how he does it, but like, he just somehow avoids the bad ones and he just gets on the good ones. I don't know how he does it. And so, um, but I tell even people like John, like, don't think we're doing better than we are because your horse is doing as good as they've been doing, and vice versa. I don't want someone to judge us because the horse or two that they bought were bad horses, because like, you can't escape it. We're all going to have bad horses, but judge me for what I have control of and the things that I mentioned on the website. Full transparency, full disclosure. I mean, like, we just had a horse just come in from the Patty Hogan's. She's a equine surgeon, and we send our horses there for layup and surgeries and things. Like, all our partners, we get the full vet reports. I send them right on to the partners. I don't sugarcoat anything. I mean, we had a horse that we spent good money on. She made like 5 breezes so far. First 4, she did real good. She broke out of the gate this week. Brad said a little disappointing. She broke pretty sharply. There was a set of 3, and right around like the last 16th, the other 2 horses kind of pulled away from her a little bit. And like, I don't have to tell the partners that. I know if I tell them that, they're going to be disappointed. I can easily just say, you know what, it's a bad work. Maybe next week's will be good. But I don't do it. I don't sugarcoat, like, and I just tell them everything, like, because like my goal and my job is to treat them like they own the horse themselves, and they hired me to just do all the work for them. And as long as I treat everyone that way, like I know that we're going to be successful. Like I know our processes are sound, from the filters that we put in play buying horses at sales to all the filters we put in, claiming horses. And I mean, I think career wise, if you go to our website, 3 of the last 4 years, I think we've averaged over 10,000 per start. Lifetime, we're probably close to 9,000 per start. I mean, if you look at the price point that we're claiming and buying horses, like that's a strong number. And if you look at earnings per start amongst others, like you'd probably be surprised on how strong that is. But like, it's not even good enough for me. I know we can do better. And that's my goal, is just to keep getting as efficient as possible. And, a lot of people, after a race is over, they'll move on to the next race and forget about it. I always go back, I watch all the replays, I check the charts for the whole day, because they always make this comment like the track has a bias to this and a bias to that. But like, I think if there is anything, you're better off going back, looking at it afterwards. And a lot of times people are drawing conclusions. You talk about handicapping before we went on air, and like people draw these conclusions. Oh, it's favorable to speed today. Yet, like the horse that got loose on the front end going 49-3 at on a 1-turn mile at Aqueduct, like it doesn't mean it's speed favoring.
Right.
It just, the elements were in his favor, but it doesn't mean the track is speed favoring.
Right.
And like you can't draw these conclusions on these like small samples of a race or two. And so I like to go back and review how the whole track played that day. But watching replays, like you really just put it all together. But before you went on air, we talked about your handicapping, and if you really handicap a race, it would probably take you 10 hours to handicap a whole card, right? I mean, like
people criticize me because it takes me about 5 hours to do a card. I'll only
probably not even enough time. You probably feel like you could even do more. I mean,
yeah, and I've written articles about what you just said about biases, that first 3 races go wire to wire, and everybody's like, oh, you got to be on the lead to win.
oh yeah,
You know what I mean? I mean,
so then they all send and they burn each other up, and then the
right.
sit in the back.
Another thing that I never do is I never react to a race right afterwards. You know what I mean? I'll always go back and watch the replay the next day or that night, calm, relaxed, and evaluate it then. Because when your adrenaline's going and your passion's going and the excitement's going, it's hard to really be objective. You know what I mean? And I've got a lot of years of experience, and it's even hard for me to be objective. So I like to take a step back. I'll watch it tomorrow. Then I'll tell you how good or bad I think that the horse might have ran. One thing I want to ask you that I find interesting, and you've got a good mind for the game, I can tell that. Who are some of the younger sires that you're excited about, or the under the radar sires that are good price points, and you think are going to be productive, that have good futures that people don't really zero in on yet?
It's a great question, and it's like it's a difficult one to really pinpoint, because like, especially when you're operating with like in our budgets, like I literally have to almost throw pedigree out the window, like,
right.
And because when you buy horses at a sale, the things that will determine the price of a horse is pedigree, how the horse breezes, the horse's size, how they vet, their conformation, right? And like I like you ever like play the video games back in the day when you're younger?
Yes.
Like Madden, and like it would have like a football, like a quarterback, and they would say, well, his arm strength rating is a 75, but his accuracy is a 50, or this running back's agility is a 40, and this running, he can break tackles is an 80. Well, like in this business, when you're buying horses, it's what you're kind of trying to do, is like, what athlete are you willing to buy? And like pedigree for us, like I have to turn that dial to like so low, and like when I was watching breezes this year, like surprisingly, like the like Midnight Storms have like really impressed me. They've really been breezing really well. But again, it's still like it's just breezes. Like I remember even like the sire Here Comes Ben, and everyone at the track at the sales were like, "Oh man, these Here Comes Bens, man, these things are breezing good and like breezing lights out." And he became nothing. So like, I really don't get like too caught up in anything particularly. Like, just kind of like look at every horse as an individual, and I really don't draw many like biases or conclusions or like, Connor, our bloodstock agent, like he was real big on Into Mischief back when I first met him. He's like, this is gonna be the next big sire. Obviously, he is, and he was real big on Constitution before, well before the Constitutions even started to take off. So Connor's like really, really good on top of that stuff. But for me, it's like I just look at every horse like an individual, and I actually hope his parents aren't too good, because if his parents are pretty good, then I probably don't have a shot to buy them.
Right. But that could be an advantage for you, and I'll tell you why. So many times these sale toppers or these horses that work those blazing, fast workouts that everybody wants and everybody's outbidding everybody else on, I think they pan out less than a lot of these 50, 40, $75,000 horses. And a lot of those horses, I'm told, you get them and you got to slow them down or filter them out and regroup with them because they're so pumped up from those sales. So you might be at an advantage actually buying those ones that are under the radar and not, working lights out and stuff like that. You
Yeah.
might have a better shot of finding that diamond in the rough than you might think.
So here's a good way to look at that. I bought the first Samurai in April. He went 10 flat on a day where I think 10 flat was the bullet. No, that was a different day. Track was pretty slow a couple days, so like 10 flat was the bullet. But he went 10 flat out like a champ, did it the right way, big stride, did it easy, everything perfect. Vet report. He sold for 200,000. Yet I still like have. He's the only horse I've never fully sold out before. Like I still have a piece left of him, like maybe 10%, something like that. But he didn't sell out. Yet I bought a Pioneer of the Nile filly in the Maryland sale who went 10-4. And we paid 140 for her. Liz Crow was the underbidder. Spent 140, not that much different than 200, same ballpark. She went 10-4. Now I know Pioneer of the Niles typically aren't going to light up the tote board with 10 flats at the Maryland sale, but 10-4 is still 10-4. And that horse sold out in 2 hours for me.
Really?
And here's what I said. If the first Samurai, if the Pioneer of the Nile filly, who we bought for 140, who went 10-4, if she had breezed like the first Samurai, she would have went for $500,000. However, if the first Samurai had breezed like her, he probably would have brought 40,000.
Wow. That's really interesting.
That's how much emphasis even my own partners are placing on pedigree and not athlete. And there's this blend of some people prefer the filly with the better pedigree, the better chance to hit something there. You do have residual value, obviously, if the fillies do well. But I think it's that's such a contrast that a 10-4 horse can sell out in 2 hours for 140, but the pure athlete who checked so many boxes physically, and like you follow baseball quite well.
Yeah.
Like you think of like athletes like Mike Trout, who were drafted out of high school, and like imagine being a scout, going to see him play at a high school game, and you're like, wow, that is one athlete right there. And then you say, but you know what? I don't want to draft him because I don't like his parents. His parents don't look very athletic.
Right.
I mean, like the athlete is here in front of you, hitting home runs out of the park, 450 feet, and he's, lasers are coming off of his bat. That's not the time to worry about who his parents are, you know?
Yeah.
Now, and so for me, I'm always going to push to athlete. That's how we've done it so far. And but I do get it. Pedigree does matter to some, and it does matter to some point. I mean, I think it matters more for yearlings. You know, I'm going to be more conscious of a pedigree when I go to the yearling sale. We bought a Nyquist filly at the Keelan sale last year, September, 200,000. Nyquist was super hot. You know, if that was by, you know, I don't know, Midnight Loot, she's probably
Right.
50,000. You know what I mean? Like, so everybody just puts so much value on these pedigrees, up and coming stallions. But I just try to get everybody to just treat each horse as individual, you know. Even like Brad's horse, British Idiom. I mean, he's by flashback, I think. And I mean, is there any other flashbacks that even done much?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Um, but I get it, and that's the challenge for me because I buy them up front first. When I first started Zilla Racing, I actually did collect money up front.
Mhm.
It was a disaster because everyone's like, "What are you looking at?" Oh, I don't want an English channel, you know. I don't want a Kitten's Joy, you know. And you're better off just buying a horse, let them choose which horse they want to get into. Um, but it's a challenge for me because when I buy them, I have to factor in marketability.
Right.
Sucks because like there's horses I like, and I know like man, just like this first Samurai, I knew when I went to 200,000 on him, I'm like, I know he's going to be a struggle for me to sell, but I liked him too much not to. So I always treat it like if I'm going to get stuck owning any of the horses myself, and I don't know if stuck is the right word, but I buy them knowing that I may have to own a piece.
Right.
So I apply very strict filters to the horses we buy. And, you know, he was one I'd be happy to own. As most of our horses, I treat that way. But to me, he was the best athlete I ever bought.
But you don't automatically keep a piece of every horse. You sell some of them.
So I used to say,
Uh,
okay, I want to keep 10% of this horse or whatever, 20% of this horse. But then what happens is when you fill it, you have other partners. Hey, you have anything available? So it's like, do you turn away that
right.
business? He'll go somewhere else to get a horse if you don't want to give him the horse. So ultimately, like you end up, you know, trying to pass the horse on to your partners. And the other thing I do, Jonathan, that's probably not in my best interest, but I think it's in the best interest for my partners. If you were to come join us and you call me up and say, I have $10,000 to $25,000 I'm willing to put into this, or I'm willing to take 5% of this horse, maybe 10% of the horse, or whatever. I always push my guys towards the lowest amount because you're either going to regret that you didn't buy more or you're going to regret you didn't buy less. And I would rather have you regret you didn't buy more because whether you own 3%, 5, 10, doesn't make a difference. When that horse is in a starting gate, it's going to be all the same to you. However, when the bad news comes in, owning bigger percentages just adds more pain.
Right.
So there's not really any emotional upside to owning more, like a greater percentage, but there's a lot more emotional pain and downside by taking bigger percentages. So yeah, I would benefit personally. The company would benefit if you took, you know, the biggest percentage you're willing to possibly put in. But I always push everybody down to the smallest amount. And even when they give me their smallest amount number, sometimes even if it's still a little higher than I'm comfortable with, I'll even say, "Are you sure you want to do this?" I have a guy, Andrew. Andrew likes taking a big piece of few horses, and I'm like, "No, no, no, take less of more."
Right.
I know, I've
It's a number.
experienced it.
Yeah. No. I agree. I agree. That's why I would buy four horses for 50 before I'd buy one for 200. I mean most of the time. Unless it was one that I really liked. So I think it's a numbers game when it comes to that. Mike, thank you so much for your time, man. I took a lot of your time, but this is all interesting stuff, and I think you got a good head for the game. I think your record already speaks for itself. I like what you're doing. I think you guys are doing a great job, and I'm excited for you, man. I'll be rooting for you.
I appreciate it so much, Jonathan. Said it's a nice to talk to you, and we've been doing this for quite a long time now, and like I feel like I've been talking to you for 10 minutes. That's what happens when you're passionate about these kind of things. Like nothing else is on your mind but this, and it's That's what we
Well,
do.
this game does that to people, and unless you're in it, you don't really realize that. Such that's it goes back to growing the game and letting people see that because it's whatever way that you're involved in horse racing, it really becomes a way of life. You know what I'm saying? It's not a job or a business like any other. I mean, it really just becomes a way of life for all of us that are involved in it. And until you experience that, you just don't understand it. But we are all really one racetrack family. As much as we compete, as competitive and cutthroat as this is, we're all under that same umbrella. And it's always good. I love talking horses with people, especially people who like yourself who know what they're talking about. It's I could go on all day, but I don't want to
I
take.
would be like, if you were interested, I would. So I just started to do Zoom with
Right.
our partners. We do Zoom after a 2-year-old sale, and we'll kind of discuss the horses that we looked at and what we like. Could I ever have you on as a guest to discuss handicapping and things like that to kind of
Oh,
help
absolutely.
educate our partners
Absolutely.
handicapping processes that you might use and utilize? And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think that would be awesome, man, to
Yeah,
have you as a guest on us.
I would love to do it. And I could even talk a little bit about owning and the advantages of a partnership and things like that from my perspective. You know what I mean? And seeing a lot of different ones. So no, I'd be happy to do that. We could talk for a minute afterwards, but let's wrap up the show. Thank you so much, and I'll stop the show and then we can chat for a minute, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Vino Rosso has taken the lead, and it's a vintage performance by Vino Rosso.
Nobody does it better.